All right, we're back in action. So here we are. A little tough to see with the being backlit, but when I cross it, it'll look a little bit better. Okay, so you can see the top. Well, I'll extend the selfie stick. It says South Africa on this side, and then 1914 and 1918, to the glorious memory of those who died and to the undying honor of those who served. This monument is erected by the regiment, the 48th Highlanders of Canada. Dilliscoobreth. I don't know if that's Gaelic. Who knows? 1939 to 1945, and then Afghanistan at the bottom. Let's get back and extend it. So similar to the cenotaph that I showed you earlier, we watched that earlier, the names were the big battles Canadians fought in the First and Second World War are inscribed in this monument. So we're walking south through Queen's Park now. There are several statues and monuments that we'll see along the way. And then the main building in this area, so Queen's Park, there's the street running around it on either side. And you've kind of got this, this park and building in the middle of those streets. But the main building is the Ontario Legislative Assembly building, so that's where the government of Ontario sort of functions. So, we're looking up at a statue of King Edward VII. So this was erected here in 1969. So, take an interesting, hopefully, view of this statue. Okay, on to the next statue. So this is a nice, quiet, peaceful place in downtown Toronto. You don't hear a lot of construction going on. Lots of squirrels hanging out. Nice trees. Nice spot. All right, let's head this way and we'll go around the queenspark building. Oh, a couple statues up ahead. We'll get those. So for those of you who don't know, Toronto is the capital of Ontario. I should probably walk over here. So this is where our provincial government operates. It's a statue of William Lyon Mackenzie. Born near Dundee, Scotland, Mackenzie came to Upper Canada in 1820 and 4 years later founded a political newspaper, the Colonial Advocate. At Queenston, sharply critical of the ruling oligarchy in the province, he entered politics, became leader of the radical wing of the Reform Party, and in 1834 was elected Toronto's first mayor. The rejection of his demands for reform drove him to lead an armed rebellion in Upper Canada in 1837. Defeated by government forces, he escaped to the United States where he found many sympathizers. In 1849, he was permitted to return to Canada and settled in Toronto before his death. He witnessed the firm establishment of a system of responsible government. So this might be a little tough to read, so I'll just read out the inscription here for this statue. To commemorate the struggle for responsible government in Upper Canada, and the pioneers of a political system which unites in free association the nations of the British Commonwealth. In memory of William Lyon Mackenzie, 1795 to 1861. First Mayor of Toronto, 1834. Member for York in the Legislature of Upper Canada, 1828 to 1836. And for Haldimand in the Legislative Assembly of Canada, 1851 to 1858. Okay, let's see what else we have on queenspark property. Oh, look at that, I've run out of places to step. I guess I'm walking on the grass. Hopefully, Dobermans and snipers are not going to take me down. All right, we'll get to the statues in a second. For me, this is far more important than statues of politicians and whatever. Upcoming here, I've never been here before. It's relatively new. A few years ago, they installed, so I showed you the cenotaph, so that's for the city of Toronto. This is the province of Ontario's monument to our military. So I think I'll just wander along the front of it, recording what I can, and then double back and get some of the plaques. So these show images of Canadian peacekeepers, UN with United Nations. So obviously Afghanistan was a huge commitment that Canada had made, and lost several soldiers there, unfortunately. One by one, they left behind the bright fields of innocence and stepped into the darkness of experience. Their brave departures were discreet and humble. Some do not return. Their absence is as big as sorrow, as wide as grief. The returning walk back toward their northern homeland. Their faces are shadowed, but they are carrying illumination in their arms. So many iconic images from Canadian military history. And see all the wreaths that would have been laid 2 days ago on Remembrance Day, November 11th. I mentioned before, Silver Cross Mother. So that's the wreath that would have been laid by a mother who lost a child serving in the Canadian military. So this was dedicated in 2006. I didn't realize it was that long ago. Canada does not have a big population, but in the First and Second World Wars, Korea, peacekeeping, I certainly think Canada has kind of punched above its weight as far as its impact on the world and their commitment to keeping this place a little bit better than it is right now, I guess. I don't know what I'm trying to say. The point that I made when I was in the Bahamas, their cenotaph, and the Bahamas Veterans Cemetery. And the same thing with the cenotaph in Niagara Falls, cenotaph in Toronto now, and this memorial. It strikes me and it makes me very sad that these poor guys, men and women, volunteered. I guess it shouldn't make me sad, I guess it should make me proud. That there are people out there who would volunteer to go to war to protect freedom. It says this stone formed part of an Inukshuk erected in 2002 at Kandahar Airfield in memory of the members of the Canadian Armed Forces who lost their lives in Afghanistan. So the fact that people will sign up, whether there's an active war going on like World War I or World War II, or people who sign up for the military in peacetime. So this is a memorial to honor Canadian heroes of the war in Afghanistan. Dedicated this 11th day of November in the year 2020. From October 2001 to March 2014, over 40,000 men and women of the Canadian Armed Forces served in Afghanistan with courage and determination. 158 of them sacrificed their lives in service to their country. The people of Ontario dedicate this memorial to the Canadian heroes who made the ultimate sacrifice to protect our values and our freedoms, lest we forget. So if you happen to be watching this video from start to finish, first of all, thank you. And you've got incredible patience. I'll just talk while I'm going through this monument. So the part where I stopped on Grosvenor Avenue, I mentioned the George Drew building. That's where I used to work. Actually, I'll tell that story later. Just mention what's written on here. So hope, remembrance, compassion, home, family, unity, camaraderie, commitment, service, courage, sacrifice, spirit, duty, resilience, dedication. Pride, friendship, solidarity. So this explains all of the images that are shown on that wall that I walked slowly past. They're a little bit hard to make out. I think probably when I was a little bit closer, they're a little bit better from farther away, so maybe I'll take a longer walk, walk from a greater distance. But here are all the images and what they mean. So you have first images from Afghanistan. This Canadian compound with American vehicles, Kandahar Base, Afghanistan, Operation Apollo 2002. Second display, Canadian Air Force fighter on NORAD duties. Number 3, a Canadian Sea King helicopter conducts a boarding exercise. Boarding exercise on the ship Protecteur in the Persian Gulf during the Gulf War. Number 4, Royal Canadian Navy ships in Gulf War. 5, Canadian M113 armored personnel carrier patrolling Cyprus Green Line, dividing the Turkish and Greek enclaves. 6 to 8, various Canadian peace support and Cold War operations. 9, the Quebec Ice Storm Army activities. We think of the military being in battles, but they also serve the public in things like the Quebec Ice Storm, where we call on the military to bail out the civilians who are at home in comfort back in Canada. Number 10, female Canadian soldier with abandoned mosque in background at Kandahar Air Base, Afghanistan, Operation Apollo 2002. 11, Canadian Armed Personnel Carrier on patrol and Hercules aircraft on perimeter of Kandahar Air Base, Afghanistan, Operation Apollo 2002. 12, Canadian soldiers and Korean villagers. 13, Royal Canadian Regiment casualty being evacuated on the 38th parallel after the assault on Chile on May 30th, 1951. 14, Canadian Sherman tanks in Korea. 15, a company of Princess Patricia Canadian Light Infantry on patrol in Korea. My friend George Couture, a person I met in 2003 when I went on my trip to Europe to visit cemeteries and battlefields, was part of the Princess Patricia Canadian Light Infantry in Korea. He served in the Second World War, landing on the beaches of Normandy with the Royal Winnipeg Rifles, and then he was captured. After World War II, he stayed in the military and then served in Korea. And I still keep in touch with him today. 16, Canadian soldiers on patrol in Korea. 17, a company of Princess Patricia Canadian Light Infantry on patrol in Korea. 18, Canadian soldiers on patrol in Korea. 19, RCAF bombers over Northwest Europe, likely 1944. 20, RCAF convoy protection, North Atlantic. That's the Royal Canadian Air Force. 21, Invasion Normandy, RCAF Mustang over Juno Beach. That's where my trip went. We were there for the opening of the Juno Beach Center in 2003. 22, D-Day, June 6, 1944, Juno Beach, Normandy. 23, Royal Canadian Air Force Women's Division, marching. 24, departure scene from Toronto, Second World War. 25, home front. 26, departure scene, Second World War. 27, Second World War Black Canadian Army enlistees. 28, deceased Canadian soldier, Italy, 1943 to 1944. 29, Canadian treating wounded child, France, 1944. 30, revised Flower class ship. Just had the 29-minute pause. 30, revised Flower class ship, Canadian corvette Halifax, 1943. 31, Canadian escort ships on North Atlantic patrol, Second World War. 32, Canadian Spitfire and Sherman tank, Normandy. 33, Canadian soldiers, Western Front, 1916 to 1918. 34, Canadian Corps with tank advancing under fire during the assault on Vimy, April 1917. 35, Canadian ace Billy Bishop in 1917 to 1918. 36, First World War Canadian soldiers, France or Flanders. 37, funeral of Canadian Sister Lowe in First World War cemetery in France. 38, First World War Canadian Aboriginal enlistees. 39, Toronto celebration, likely homecoming from South African War. That was 1899 to 1902. 40, Canadian troopers, South African War. 41, Canadian mounted rifles in Winnipeg around 1901. 42, the Cannington Militia, part of the 34th Battalion of the Ontario County Volunteers around the 1860s. 43, the Battle of Ridgeway, 1866. And 44, the Northwest Rebellion, 1885. So I'll scan that wall again from further back. Might be a little bit better. While editing this video, I realized I forgot to finish my story that I started at the Afghanistan Memorial.
Many years ago, when I worked in downtown Toronto, I was 1 block north of the coroner's office. And that was the end point of the Highway of Heroes. Now, every time a Canadian soldier was killed in Afghanistan, their bodies were flown to Canadian Forces Base Trenton. They would be met there by their families, dignitaries, and military personnel. They would then make the 170-kilometer drive west to Toronto, to the coroner's office, where an autopsy would be performed. Now, out of that tragedy, a beautiful tribute was born. People would line the bridges and roads of their route. They would be waving Canadian flags. There would always be fire engines, police cars, and civilians coming out to pay their respects and share some tears while this procession made their way from CFB Trenton to Toronto. I'll put some links in the description about the Highway of Heroes. Now, one time I was finishing up work and heard that there were 2 Canadian soldiers en route to the coroner's office. So I and a colleague decided to stick around and wait, join the crowd, and wait until the procession arrived at the coroner's office. So the 2 hearses and the limousines containing the family members arrived, and one of the windows of one of the limousines rolled down, and it was the mother of one of the soldiers. And she was thanking us. I'll never forget that. We all had tears in our eyes. She just lost her child, and she was the one who was thanking us.
Just wanted to get back to the inscription that lists the wars and alliances and the major peace support missions that Canada has taken part in. So the wars and alliances: the Fenian Raids, the Riel Rebellion, the Northwest Rebellion, the South African War, the Great War, Siberia and North Russia, the Second World War, the Korean War, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, North American Air Defense Command, domestic operations, Iraqi War, Afghanistan, and the campaign against terror. I'm going to get stabbed by the rose bush here, but let's just move this over. So, major peace support missions: United Nations Truce Supervisory Organization, United Nations Military Observer Group, India-Pakistan, International Commission for Control and Supervision, Indochina, United Nations Emergency Force, Egypt, United Nations Observer Group in Lebanon, United Nations Operation in the Congo, United Nations Force in Cyprus, and my friend George Couture also served in Cyprus. United Nations India-Pakistan Observer Mission, International Commission for Control and Supervision, Vietnam, United Nations Emergency Force 2, Egypt, United Nations Disengagement Force, Golan Heights, United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon, Multinational Force and Observers, Sinai, United Nations Iran-Iraq Military Observer Group, United Nations Observer Group in Central America, United Nations Transition Assistance Group, Namibia, United Nations Iraq-Kuwait Observer Mission, United Nations Protection Force, former Yugoslavia, United Nations Transitional Authority in Cambodia, United Task Force Somalia, United Nations Mission in Haiti, United Nations Assistance Mission in Rwanda, Implementation Force in Bosnia-Herzegovina, United Nations Support Mission in Haiti, Multinational Force in Eastern Zaire, Stabilization Force Bosnia-Herzegovina, United Nations Transition Mission in Haiti, United Nations Mission in Ethiopia and Eritrea. And for a guy who loves military history, that was a learning lesson for me. I know that peacekeeping is a very important tradition and ongoing mission that Canada is involved in, but seeing all those missions that they were on, my God, makes me very proud of our military. So here is the Legislative Assembly of Ontario. Let's just do the 3-meter view. directly in front of me, I think, is the Medical Sciences Building, University of Toronto. So all those buildings in front, to the left, a little bit to the right, I believe those are U of T property now. And I sweated it out in an immunology class in that building. Bad memories. Anyway, back to this. So we have George Brown statue to the left. We have Whitney, a statue to the right. I'll just point the camera towards Whitney. Not sure why all these gates are up and cameras are out here, but if I get taken down, that's life. So there is a statue to, okay, I'm stepping on the grass here, oh boy, Queen Elizabeth. Second. I'll walk around the other side where I believe Queen Victoria is sitting. So Queen's Park here, these grounds, whenever there's a big protest, whenever something bad is happening, and whether it's the Ontario government or the Canadian federal government, people like to congregate on this area. Very nice area. Can understand why people would want to stand around, and kind of ruins your day, maybe when you've got counter protesters across from you. So there's a close-up, sort of, the building. But I guess having the ability to protest and gather and say, have your say, is obviously one of the important parts of this country. Well, let's go see Queen Victoria first, and then I'll come back. Yeah, being able to peacefully assemble, say your piece, is certainly a lot more than what other countries have. So we should be very thankful for that. So Queen Victoria. And then we'll do one more statue over here. Not sure where these cannons are from. It says Victoria Regina, and then something in Latin, something Britannia, something Toronto. Yeah. So if you speak Latin or can read Latin and you want to leave a comment, feel free to do so. I guess I could put it into Google Translate. John Sandfield MacDonald, Prime Minister of Ontario, 1867 to 1871. couple of other statues up ahead. This is Lieutenant Colonel John Graves Simcoe, 1752 to 1752 to 1806. First Lieutenant Governor of Upper Canada, 1791 to 1796, I think. Founder of the City of Toronto, July 30th, 1793, maybe. So he is the guy, John Graves Simcoe, when we have a long weekend in August, and we just kind of generally call it Civic Holiday, but it's actually Simcoe Day. John Graves Simcoe, he's the guy you can thank for the fact that you got the day off work and got to go to a cottage if you're lucky enough to have a cottage. All right, let's hope I don't get run over. Hey, pigeons. This is erected to the memory of the officers and men who fell on the battlefields of the Northwest in 1885.